Hello and welcome everyone. It's Fast Kareem with Learn It, and I have something exciting for you all today. I want to present you Excel 2021, the latest release of the software. Now in this course, I do want to focus on two particular topics. I've broken them up. The first one being lists and tables and charts. We're going to cover some topics focusing on lists, how we can convert them into tables to analyze data. And from there, how we can use and view them visually by using charts. Pretty interesting things we can do with charts, like create templates, add, remove data. And there's also special types of charts like Sparklines that I want to talk about. Once we cover those, I want to dive in and spend some time with Excel reporting tools like pivot tables. Some enhancements that we have with them, how to filter them, how to create them, how to work with pivot charts. And then from there, I want to end off this session with formatting tricks, protection tricks, how to use the review tab to share comments. A lot of interesting stuff we have there. Now, as always, if you do enjoy this video, I do want you to make sure to like and subscribe if possible. Now, if you are looking to earn certificates and watch videos without ads, I recommend signing up for Learn It Anytime, our dedicated online training subscription service. Go ahead and check out the link in the description for more information. Now, if you have any questions, be sure to check out Offsite. Me or one of the other instructors can go ahead and answer that question for you. And as always, if this course has exercise files, you can go ahead and find them in the description of the video below. Let's go ahead and begin. Great, so I went ahead and opened up the workbook that's inside the description, and I'm actually on the very first sheet called Creating Tables. And what we're actually looking at here inside the Creating Tables sheet is a list of information. But here's the thing though, this list of information is actually known as a well-defined list. Because there's three things that it has that makes it a well-defined list. The first one, it has headers. And the headers are actually unique compared to each other. There's no two headers that are the same. The second guideline that it has that makes it a well-defined list is the fact that the headers and data are unique. We don't have two headers, or we don't have a header and a data piece that are the same. I don't have a header called Joe or a header called AT. If I did, that'd be considered a piece of data. Now, the third thing that I need in order to consider this a well-defined list is a complete data set. Meaning I can't have any blank rows or columns, even if they're hidden. And the interesting part is I actually have all three of these things. And if you do have all three of these things, you're in prime shape to actually get this list of information and convert it to something known as a table that was invented in 2007. It's nothing new, but it's a great tool to analyze data sets. It gives you automatic formatting, gives you filtering tools, gives you remove a duplicate tool. Now, in order to actually convert this list into a table, we go to our Insert tab to do that. Because one of the command groups that we have access to is known as tables. And there's a table tool within there with a keyboard shortcut known as Control+T to create the table. So if you ever do need to create a table, all you have to worry about is just mainly focusing on having your cell address box within the list. And lucky for me, I already have my cell address box within my list. So I'm in pretty good shape where I can just use the keyboard shortcut, Control and the letter T, to go ahead and create a table. Or of course, if I'm not a fan of keyboard shortcuts, I can just click on table there. But these do save you time, so practice them today. Let me create my table and hit OK. Great. Now before I have you pause this video and create a table yourself, because I want you to catch up with me. I want to discuss some benefits, like what's the point of having this table? Why did we do that? Just for fun? Well, I do enjoy Excel. It is fun for me. But I do want to mention that when you created a table, or when you do create a table, a brand new tab is going to appear in Excel 2021 called the Table Design tab. It's going to hold a set of tools that you can use to analyze that data set. I just want to talk about 3 or 4 tools that you might want to use when working with tables. Now, the very first thing that I like to do when working with a data set that's a table, most of my data sets these days are tables, is I like to go to the Table Design tab and give it a name. I like to name my data sets. It makes reporting for pivot tables, source data, makes it easier to find that, and it also makes it easier to navigate across a workbook. So let me just go into the table name area, and I'm going to call this table, and I'll call it employees ID. And it has to be one word, and the whole point of that for right now is, just so you know, is your table names are actually all tracked inside the name box. And if you ever need to go find that table, the name box will show you the name of it, and it'll navigate you to it if you need to. Very useful to have things named in Excel. So one benefit is naming the data set. A small one, but useful. The second benefit is the fact that this now has a new filtering tool. It was released in 2013, but I'm noticing a lot of people aren't really utilizing it. Inside the Table Design tab, we have a Tools command group. And one of the tools that we have available for our tables is called a slicer, which allows us to filter columns of data much more visually. Let me insert a slicer. And I'm going to insert a slicer just for I'll do it for the locations. And hit OK. I'm going to make it smaller. I don't need to make it this big. There we go. And I'll move it to the top here. This essentially is a visual filter that allows me to filter a column of data without using the little drop-down arrow here. I can clear the filter, and if I wanted, I can select multiple items by turning on the multi-select or holding the Control key down as I select my options. So far we have the ability to name the table and to filter the table visually. Let me go back into my table and select the Table Design tab to show you more. Because another useful tool that we have available inside the table is something known as the total row. And if I turn that on inside the table style options, it's actually going to give me a bottom row. And if I click on a cell in the bottom row, there will be a little drop down arrow to which I can run a function, and I can aggregate the column above. So I can count there's 37 employees, and I can see that the average pay rate here is $11.37. And if I scroll up to the top using my filter, I can browse these situations based off the building that they're located in. I can see that building 2's pay rate's a little lower than the average for these 12 employees. Pretty interesting stuff. Now, I do want to show you one more thing with this table before I have you pause the video and practice yourself. I'm going to insert a new row into the table. New rows show up above a selected row. And I'm just simply going to grab this top row, and I'm going to copy it and make a duplicate copy of it. So I have 2 rows that are exactly the same. Your Excel Table Design tab has a tool known as Remove Duplicates. And you give it a click, it actually allows you to browse the data set. And you can search a column or the entire data set. I'm going to do my whole data set and hit OK. And it'll remove any second occurrence of a duplicate and third or fourth. And I'll let you know how many occurrences it removed. 1 duplicate value found. 37 unique values remained. Wonderful. So the table design tab does a lot. It allows you to name your data set. It allows you to filter your data set. It allows you to remove duplicates in your data set. It allows you to do calculations in the data set. And of course, if you haven't noticed, you can even choose formatting options, which it automatically comes with one, the blue format. I do recommend to pause this video. In fact, pause it on this screen here so you can see all the things we tried. And give a try for them. Make sure that you're inside of the table when you create it so that you can see this tab and you can utilize these tools. Once you do practice, pause the video and come back though, because there's still a lot more to cover. Hopefully you had a little fun playing around with the table. Now that we've added those things to the table, I do want to flip the page in the workbook to custom sorting. And in order to do that, I'm just going to use my keyboard shortcut Control and Page Down on my keyboard. I might have to hold F and N if I'm on a laptop, but that will flip the page in the workbook. And over here in custom sorting, I'm going to zoom in here. I want to show you that this is a list. It's a list, but it's not a well-defined one. If you're wondering why, it's because we have a blank column. Now, I have to build a full name column. And I'm sure in previous versions of Excel, we had a data tab, and we would probably use things like maybe text to columns, concatenate, concat, to manipulate text strings, they call it. But we do have a tool. It's known as flash fill inside of our data tab. And what it essentially does is it looks for patterns on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of a spreadsheet. And it realizes that, oh, you put these two words together. That's the pattern that's done. So what we can do is on this new cell, instead of repeating the same thing and adding these two words together, we can have Excel do it. We can use a tool known as flash fill, which is actually located inside of your data tab, inside of a particular command group known as data tools, where the flash fill tool is located. I do admit though, I like using keyboard shortcuts for flash fill, so I use the Control and the letter E to activate it. Now when I use flash fill, I'm going to hit Control E here. It's going to repeat the pattern going down the entire column. So it's pretty magical how with just one name and a click of a flash fill or Control E, you can actually complete an entire column and now make it a well-defined list. So now that we've done this, I do before we add more material here, because I want to actually sort this data using multi-level sorts. I want to first have you pause the video and practice flash fill. And when we come back, we'll talk about custom sorting. So I'm over here looking at this data set, the pair company employee master list, located on the custom sorting sheet. And I'm noticing it's not really sorted too well. I have my days off all scattered. It's not even alphabetical order. It's not sorted by zones even. Now I'm familiar that most of us know inside the data tab, we have a sort and filter command group. And within there, we actually have a nice large sort option that allows us to do multiple levels of sorting. So I can have one column sorted and then after that sort another column and another column. And this is known as a multiple level sort. Let me set one up. As long as I'm inside the data and I click on sort, I'll be in good shape to see this window. Now the sort window allows me to change the ordering of the data by selecting a sort by. Here I'm going to do the days off, and I want to sort it based off the value inside of the cell. Now, if I do this alphabetically from A to Z, it's going to put Friday on top. I want to have Sunday. So when I go back to sort, instead of using A to Z, I'm going to switch this to a custom list. And Excel actually has the built-in days of the week in the order, starting with Sunday on top. Be sure to use the full spelled out version, because this data set has the full spelled out version of the days. And it's just going to sort it based off this order. Let's see that reflective change. Cool, I can see all of my Sunday day offs are in order now. I can go further and I can sort another level. I can have the location sorted. But this will come first. So this is the first priority. Let me go ahead and sort the locations for my second priority now. And I'm just going to add a level. Next, you notice how it says then by. I want to sort it based off, and I said location here, from A to Z, and I'll hit OK. All right, so now it's doing this, and then it's sorting this next, and it seems like it did a pretty good job. I can go further, I can sort the zones afterwards, but remember, this one might not come out 100% perfect, because these two come first. So I'm going to add a third level at the bottom there for my zone. Do it from A to Z, that's fine, and hit OK. So let's take a look at this here. All right, I can see that some of my centrals got cut off because they're in building 3, and I couldn't do anything about that. And last but not least, I'm going to add in another sort, just sort it based off the last names in that list. So I'm just going to go to the bottom and hit add level and select last name from A to Z and hit OK. So now I have multiple levels of sorting where I have the days off, and then I have the buildings, then I went to the zones, and then last but not least, hit last names. And as you can see, there's a letter A at the bottom, but that's simply because they're in building 3, Pacific, and the sort order is set up for this to come forth. Interesting data set. I do want you to pause the video and play around with custom sorting before you move on from this sheet. Don't forget to come back. Have fun. Welcome back. I'm currently on the subtotals sheet in the workbook, and I'm looking at a worksheet that's tracking the pair wine distribution, tracking what representative sold things, what group we sold, and what part we sold, and how much sales, margin, and quantity we have. Now what we can do here is we can use a tool inside of our data tab that allows us to outline things. It's known as Subtotal, and it's available inside of our outline command group. It essentially allows us to go down one column, and once it detects a change in the text or the value in the column, it's going to run a function like sum, max, min on another set of columns. Now, important thing in order for Subtotal to work is the column that it goes down and tries to find a change in, it has to be sorted. Otherwise, it's not going to find the correct change, and it's going to be broken off into several different subtotals. So I'm going to click into this column here, the type column, because I do want to see how much red I've sold versus white. And in order to do that, I have to actually separate all the red values versus the white values. And lucky for us, inside of our data tab, we have access to the sort and filter command group where we can use an A to Z sort. In our previous video, we covered the multi-level sort, but we don't need that for this situation. Great, now I have all of my reds in order and all of my whites in order. If I want, I can use the subtotaling feature on this list of information. It won't work for any tables that you have, but the subtotal will allow me to check a certain column for any changes that I have. I can use a function known as sum, and then I can select what columns that I want to actually sum, like sales, margin, and quantity. If there were any subtotals in existence, I would replace them because I've already sorted another column. And I do want to see a summary below the data of the grand total, the red, and the white being sold. Let me hit OK to see this reflective change. Wonderful. It looks like it did nothing, but if you look closely, there's actually 3 different levels or 3 different views of this worksheet that we can see now. View number 1 allows me to see the grand total. Don't be too alarmed if you see these pound signs. You simply have to click on the triangle on the left-hand side and do 2 clicks. That'll give you the best fit for all of your columns. And as you can see here, I found the grand total. This is for both red and white for my sales, margin, and quantity. If I click on this second view here, it's actually going to break it down with the white and the red total, with the grand total on the bottom. And the third option here is actually going to be my complete data set, but as I scroll through it with these newly updated scroll bars, you're going to see that they've added in subtotals, hence the name subtotal. And if I go to the very bottom, remember we asked to include a summary below the data? I can see that I have the white and the grand total that showed up. Pretty interesting stuff. I have the 3 levels available in my worksheet now. I do want to remind everybody that how I did this is I went to my data tab and I actually accessed my outline command group and I took advantage of subtotal. Now, an important thing to remember before doing this is to have a column sorted before trying out this example. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can run a subtotal on this worksheet. You don't have to necessarily do the type column. You can try doing the group or the part column. But the big thing is whatever column you do has to be sorted. Practice that. Don't forget to come back though. See you soon. So, this little video, this little snippet is actually for the PC users. Many people use Excel and they use a PC. If you have a Mac, they don't have this available. But it's something that you can live without. Now, if you have a chunk of data that you want to analyze with a visual, create a table, do some conditional formatting, calculate some totals, pretty much many things when you have to analyze data. You can always highlight the data using a keyboard shortcut. This is a good one, Control A. As long as your cell address box is within the data, you can actually highlight the whole surrounding data using that shortcut. Control A. But the important thing is to notice that now we have something called quick analysis that pops up. And this quick analysis tool allows us to do quick little things like conditional formatting that originally was in the Home tab. I can insert charts that was in the Insert tab. I can calculate totals, that's in the Formulas tab. I can insert tables. Ooh, I have to cross it, but it's okay. And I have to insert Sparklines as well. So it's taking a lot of things, 3 things from the Insert tab, 1 thing from the Formulas tab, and 1 thing from the Home tab, and it's putting it right at my fingertips. Hence the name Quick Analysis. Now, if I click on this, I can hover over these items just to see a live preview of them. These are known as live previews, and I can adjust the settings for them as I click on them. I can even see live previews for my charts, which we'll talk about in just a second. There's even a recommended charts tool that you can browse through. Or calculate totals, like this is a very useful one for a lot of people. I can find rows, a sum row, an average row, a count row, a percentage of a grand total, the running total, as well as columns. If I hit this little arrow here, there's whole columns available for me. I can insert a table from here. And I can even create something known as Sparklines, which we're going to cover today in a little bit, which are tiny little charts that fit in a single cell that show trends within the data. So this quick analysis tool is definitely useful. But you do definitely have to train your brain to start using it, as opposed to going up here for the certain set of tools that are available there. It'd be best if you pause the video and just poke around your quick analysis tool, practice the shortcut we just showed you, and then continue on where we're going to talk about charting, how we can create charts, what enhancements are there to the charts, and how we can save the charts as a template so that we can reuse them for other data sets. Very interesting stuff. Don't forget to come back after playing around with the quick analysis tool. If you're on a Mac, just go ahead and skip this part and go on to charting. Welcome back. Let's spend some time talking about charts, because most people are visually based. And instead of looking at numbers, it might help to see visuals, whether it's a pie chart, a bar chart, a line chart, various different styles of charts. Now, as long as you have data selected, like if I hit Control and the letter A and grab this data, I can run up to my Insert tab and there's a command group completely devoted to using charts. Now, an interesting tool they've added in is something called recommended charts. It'll show you a list of all the charts that you might want to use with this data set, as well as a list of all the charts that are available. There really isn't a reason for you not to check this out. Now, the recommended charts tool is going to allow you to browse the recommendations and even read a little description of why you might want to use this chart, what it helps describe, and we can browse through all these other options until we decide what chart we want to use. Now, if we don't find the chart that we want, we can always browse on all charts, and we can take a look at any existing charts that we have. Here, let me just use this top option here in recommended charts and hit OK. Great. Added in a chart there. You know, if you ever do end up getting more data, like here if I add in a new total, I'm going to use quick analysis, something we covered earlier, and find the average. This data doesn't get included in the chart. So if you ever need to add data to a chart, you can simply go back to the chart and select it. Notice how this doesn't include the average column. If I need to, I can always go to the Chart Design tab that shows up when the chart's selected and reselect the data. I'm just going to go ahead and go in here and hit Control and the letter A to grab the average column as well and hit OK. And now I can see the reflective change there where the average has been added. Now, something that I do want to showcase here is one of the newer chart styles. I want to replace that average with a line going across the bars. And lucky for us, I have the ability to get these types of charts that I create and change them to newer charts that Excel has released. One chart that I want to showcase today, I'm going to click on Change Chart Type, is known as the combo chart. The combo chart allows me to select a style of chart for each series of data. I'm going to leave the average as a line and hit OK. So now I have a combination of a bar chart and a line chart in one. What I do want you to practice doing is adding in a chart. Once you add it in, add an average column and try to add in the data by choosing Select Data and then changing the chart type to build a combo chart. Pause the video before we add more to it. Pause the video and practice that, and play the video again when you're done. Great, hopefully that went smooth, but hopefully you have a combo chart in front of you. Now there are some things that I want to talk about with this chart, because now all of our editing tools are available directly next to the chart. So if we need to remove things like the chart title, we can remove it from here. If we need to move things like the legend to the top, we can move it directly from here. If we need to filter off things, maybe you don't want to see the average anymore, we can apply the filter from here. If you want to change the colors, we have a color option from here. So a lot of different drastic little changes you can make to a chart by selecting the chart elements, the chart styles, or even the filter option. Let me add my average again. Now, the thing about charts is you like to keep them consistent. You hopefully want to make them all look the same, so that way there's not too many charts to process. Something that we have the ability to do is we can save charts that we've created or someone else has created as a template. So that if we have another data set, we don't have to make it green, we don't have to add the data labels and things of that nature. Move the legend to the top, all that will be done for us. If I want, I can right click the chart itself, and one of the options that are available is the Save As template. Let me go ahead and click on that. Save As template. And it's asking me to save the chart in a particular location known as charts. You have to save it in this location so that you can use it. I'm going to go ahead and call it my chart template. And hit save. Now in the future, if you ever come across another data set, like the pair record sales, you can always highlight it. Hopefully you're going to use the shortcut Control A. And then from there, inside of your Insert tab, you can always use your templates by going to the Recommended Charts tool, and under All Charts, you have access to your templates. And if I hit OK here, I can go ahead and quickly build a chart that mimics the chart in Charting 1, because I've saved these properties as a template. I do want you to pause the video, and I want you to try creating and formatting your chart a bit, but then saving it as a template. Now the key thing is seeing if you can reuse the template in Charting 2. Now if it ever comes time to where you want to delete a template, you no longer need that template, just always remember that inside of your templates folder, you have an option to manage your templates. This allows you to delete, move, or rename any templates that you have for your charts. Go ahead and pause the video and practice playing around with these recommended charts. Practice saving your templates and editing the chart. Spend some time on it. Spend some time on it. It's a pretty interesting world. And then come right back so we can talk about another style of chart that fits in a single cell. It's known as a sparkline. Hopefully you had a little fun inserting data charts, messing around with the recommended charts, and editing the chart elements. At the very end, we saved it as a template. But there is a style of chart known as a sparkline that I want to spend some time covering. Let me click on the Sparklines sheet that I have in the workbook. And I just want to scroll in, and I'm going to zoom into this worksheet because there's a lot of salespeople. And it's tracking about a few months of data, May through October. Now, if you wanted to see things visually, like what's the top selling month or what's the lowest selling month, are there any negative values? A chart could work, but there'd be so many different bars because there's so many different salespeople. Instead, we can actually highlight data and either use the quick analysis tool to insert a sparkline, or we can run up to the Insert tab and use the command group known as Sparkline. Let me run through all three types. Let me build a sparkline that will show a line mimicking the data. And I'm just going to choose the location of the range, the location of it right here. And because I already had the data set highlighted, it found the data range. So that step's done for me. Let me hit OK. This is a sparkline. When you add a sparkline, Excel gives you this brand new tab known as the Sparkline tab to format and edit the sparkline. I have the ability to change the style of the sparkline from here. Let me make it a little darker. and add in something known as marker colors, where I can show my highest values with a certain color. There's a green dot there. And I can also show my lowest values, maybe with a red dot there. Now this is one style. I also have this other style where I'm going to highlight this here. This time I'm going to use quick analysis, Sparkline. I'm going to use the column, because I can change the marker color again, and I can change it to show the highest point in green this time, and I can see that October is my highest month. I can change the low point here for red, and I can see that June's the lowest month for this salesperson. And the cool thing is, if any of these values change, the Sparkline also changes. Now the final type of Sparkline works great with negative values. I had a negative 100 and I had a negative 1000. If I highlight this data set here and I insert a Sparkline, there's something known as a win-loss. I'm going to change the color of the Sparkline to black as well, but it essentially shows me my negative values below the equator line there. And I can show my highest point in a certain color. I can show my lowest point in a certain color, and my negative points in a certain color. So it shows a lot more than just a line and the columns there. Now the cool thing about Sparklines is that you can use the autofill handle on them. And if you want, these act as background images that change. So if you change a value, the Sparkline changes with it. You can also type in these cells. I don't recommend it. You can type in the cell, but it just acts as a background image at that point. Kind of hard to see the Sparkline and even read the text. Now before moving on from this, I do consider this a style chart. I can go ahead and drag down and do the rest of them there. I do want you to practice adding in your very own Sparkline and then using the Sparkline tab that shows up when you're on top of it to format it the way you would like to. I want you to practice at least a line, a column, and a win-loss, one of each. And I just want to see the lowest point and the highest point and maybe a negative point for my win-loss values. Once you do feel confident enough and comfortable enough using Sparklines, go ahead and come back to this video, because I do want to start covering something known as reports, known as pivot tables, where we have large amounts of data that we can summarize into these reports that track and find metrics for us. A lot of fancy tools there. See you soon. Have fun practicing Sparklines. All right. I do want to spend some time talking about Excel pivot tables, because there's certain times where you're browsing data. This is a small data set. I also have large data sets where it's about 26 different columns. In fact, this data set here is tracking the order details for December of 2014. Tracking in when the order came in using a date field. It's using a date field. It's tracking in salespeople, how many salespeople we have, what region they're from, when the item shipped. And we're even tracking the metrics of what item we sold, what category that comes from, and what's the unit price, how much quantity, and what revenue each salesperson brought in. The payment type, a lot of values that we can work off of here. Now, if someone were to ask you, hey, who's the top seller for December? How would you answer that? I mean, you can sit there and filter this left and right. Or, I mean, filtering it does work if you think about it, right? Filtering it does work. I can filter based off salesperson, one by one. I can do that. But if there's too many salespeople, this kind of becomes an impossible task. Then I can highlight the revenue. And I can see on the bottom in the status bar, I can see the sum of the revenue and the average of the revenue. That would take forever. There's 8 different salespeople. Let me clear that filter there. A lot of manual motions that way. However, though, if I create a table, we learned about that in the very beginning. If I put my cell address box in here and I hit Control T and I give this data set a name, I'm going to hit Control T and hit OK. Now remember, we do that so that we can get access to the Table Design tab. I'm going to give my table a name. It's just a good practice. I'm going to call it Table Data December 14. And essentially, this tool, Table, allows us to create something known as a pivot table, which can help us summarize this data set. Summarize with pivot table. I want to do that. I want to summarize this with the pivot table. Let me click on Summarize with Pivot Table. And because I've named the data set, I don't have to worry about highlighting everything. It's a table. It just found the entire data set as long as my cell address box is within the data when I click on Summarize with Pivot Table. It's recommended for us to build our pivot tables on new worksheets as opposed to existing worksheets or having a pivot table touch each other. They might break, or if it touches the source data, it'll get a circular reference. I'm going to build it on a new worksheet. It will show up to the left-hand side of the source data worksheet that we're on, and when I hit OK here, we'll see it. I'm going to give it a name though. I'm going to call it PT for Pivot Table 1. Pivot Table 1. I'm going to zoom in here, and I just want to show you a few things with this pivot table before we begin. I do have a green cell address box, and it's inside of my empty pivot table report. Because of that property being inside of the empty report, Excel has given me access to 3 different things. The first one being a Pivot Table Analyze tab, helping me analyze my report, design certain fields within it. The second being the Design tab, choosing how I want the layout to be, whether or not I want a grand total or subtotal being displayed. And the third area, of course, for my pivot table report is to build the report. I have something known as a pivot table field list, where I have all of the columns of my data, and I have 4 different boxes to drag and drop these columns into. Depending on what box I drop these columns into, it's going to build a different area of my report. Now, before I do build this pivot table and talk about the new enhancements to it, and I build a top seller pivot table, I just want you to pause the video and create a table using the data sheet. Give it a name like I did. And come to this stage where you have an empty pivot table on a new worksheet. So that way, as I build it, you can go ahead and follow along and you're not too far behind. Pause the video now. And hopefully you're back. Hopefully you're back after that pause and you are caught up with me. Let me go ahead and continue now and build the top seller pivot table. I'm going to do that by going over to my pivot table field list. Now, if this is not there, it's simply because you moved your cell address box. So you have to go back into it to see it. But they did add a new toolbox that we have available. This toolbox allows us to format our fields and have them in alphabetical order. So I can change this and have it in A to Z order. Extremely useful when I have 26 different columns of data. In addition to that, now that I can see address on top and the zip code on the bottom, I can also rearrange this field list. I can get this top box and these 4 boxes, and I can rearrange them. And I actually prefer that setting. I like to have them side by side to where I see all of my fields and my 4 boxes side by side here. Now this allows me to see more columns at a time as opposed to this one because the box is super small here. This is called side by side and this is known as stacked. Let me change it. I'm going to change it to side by side. All personal preference, you don't have to do these things. But now it's coming time to where I can build my report, where I can track the salesperson. And I have an option to build a salesperson row. I can go down the rows with my salespeople. Or I can build columns with my salespeople. Let me show you. I can drag and drop it into columns. And now every salesperson in my data sheet gets their own column in the report. Or I can drag and drop it into rows. And now every salesperson gets a unique row in my report. This looks much more compact. I'm going to go with this one here. I'm also wanting to track the revenue here, so I'm going to drag and drop the revenue into the values box. Now it's summed the revenue for me. Now something we like to do with pivot tables is filter them. And if you needed to filter by salesperson, for many years we had this little drop down arrow that shows up in the rows box where you can filter based off the items within that field. Now if you want though, inside of the Pivot Table Analyze tab, the tab that's only there when you're inside the report, you have a special command group known as filter. One of the tools that we have available is to insert a slicer there. And I'm going to insert a slicer for the salesperson and hit OK. We've seen this before with our tables, but now I have a visual filter for my report here instead of using this drop down. Very useful. Let me clear this here. So I have the ability to use a slicer. And in addition to that, if you have any fields that are formatted as a date, like I have two, I have ship date and order date. There's a special type of slicer that's actually known as a timeline. And if I go to my Pivot Table Analyze tab and I use Insert Timeline, I have to make sure that the data source actually has a date column. Mine does, so I'm in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and I want to add in a timeline for my order dates that I can filter with. So if I need to, I can go ahead and filter this report based off the month December, and then I can go into the days itself and I can track the days. I can see who sold what on what days. I can see everyone's had a few sales every other day of the month of December there. That's a large sale there. I'm going to clear this filter. So, working with timelines, slicers, and reports are pretty common practices. Now, so far, I've added two things. I've added in a report and a filter mechanism, essentially. The third thing I'm going to do for this report, for having you catch up with these items, is I'm going to go to the Pivot Table Analyze tab. That's only there if you're inside the report. And I want to point out there is an ability to use a special tool known as Pivot Chart, which is a visual of a report. Let me build a pivot chart for my report. And I'm going to use a bar chart here and hit OK. Great. So what I want you to do here, before I add more items to this pivot table, is I just want you to spend some time adding in a pivot table that tracks the top seller. And then to make your life easier for filtering, add in a slicer for the salesperson. If you want to filter by the dates, go and add in an order date timeline. And then at the very end, go to your tools for your report and add in a chart, more specifically a pivot chart. All these things are connected now. If I filter my pivot chart, if I go for a certain date, I can see everything constantly changing. Now I do want to talk about editing, formatting, sorting, something known as drilling down a pivot table. But I do want you to pause the video and catch up a bit before we move on. So go ahead and make sure that you have these three things: the pivot table report, a timeline and a slicer, and a pivot chart before moving forward. It's up to you if you want to change your field list and sort it from A to Z. I'd recommend it, but if you're already used to the original layout, there's no need to. Hopefully you're having fun building those reports. Let me go ahead and clear this filter here and this filter here to go back to my original report because we're still not done. There are some formatting tricks that we can do with this report. Like one thing that I usually do is I have my report sorted based off revenue so I can see my top seller on top and my bottom seller on the bottom. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose sort directly from the sum of revenue column so that in case I add any new values to it, those will also come out sorted. Notice how my chart also came out sorted as well this time. But they are kind of backwards if you notice. Like I have Jan on top and Nancy on top. I can actually select the data series of the chart. The bars themselves are referred to as the data series. And I can format them. One of the options for them is to make the bars nice and large. I'm going to make them into like 32% there. There we go. And I can also go ahead and select the names next to the bars and I can format that as well by right clicking and choosing Format Axis. This allows me to go ahead and reverse the categories of my chart. So things are looking good with the chart now, and I also like hiding these filters, right? The field buttons, we don't need them anymore because I have a timeline and a slicer, so I can right click and hide all the field buttons on the chart, making my chart nice and large. Nor do I need a legend. I can hit delete there, and I can also get rid of this axis by hitting delete on my keyboard. And instead I can add in something known as data labels. Now I'm sure we're getting bothered by this 17 being cut off, so I'm just going to click inside of the plot area of my chart and adjust the size of it. Great. So I formatted my pivot table report, which led to me formatting my chart quite a bit. In addition to that, I also want to show currency values. I can right click and I can change the number format for these cells. From there, I can change it to currency, and I can knock off these decimal places as well and hit OK. Now this pivot table looks good. It's nice and clean. It's a simple report, very basic one. If I go over to my design tab now, I have the option to choosing my report layout. I can go into outline form, which will label the columns or the rows. Now it says salesperson. Or I can go to the tabular form, which adds little cell boxes around each value. I'm going to go back over to the compact form, which is our original pivot table layout. And I can even adjust my grand totals, turning it off or on, as well as my subtotals if I had any. Now, keep in mind, in this version of the software, we can save the design settings now as a default layout for future pivot tables. So if you don't want grand totals to show up, you can always go to your File tab, and under Options, you have the tool to create a default layout for your pivot tables under Data. I'm going to edit the default layout. And I can essentially go into a pivot table that I have and choose Import. This will change all the settings to that pivot table, and I can hit OK. I'm going to hit Reset to Excel Default and then hit OK. Yeah, so if you ever do make a mistake, you no longer like the one that you have, you're going to hit Reset to Excel Default and hit OK. Cool. Let me go ahead and add my grand totals back there. So I have the ability to format, to sort, add currency values, And I've built my report. I figured out that Nancy's the top seller in December. But in this workbook, I actually have another worksheet. It's called Complete Data. I'm tracking the entire year's worth of data. I want to actually see if the trend continues the whole year. Now there's two choices. You can build a whole new pivot table with complete data. You can hit Control T, build a table, summarize with the pivot table and build it. I'm going to call this T complete data. Or you can be a little clever and learn that inside the pivot table analyze tab, you have an option to change data sources. And if you change the data source, as long as the columns match, I can type in T complete data and it'll swap it to that data source's name. And as you can see, all the settings that I've done, all the sortings that I've done, all the formatting that I've done has stayed. But now I'm analyzing a larger data set, the whole year's worth of data. And it actually looks like most of these positions did not move at all. Did not move at all, looking good. Now, if you do need to analyze this pivot table a little further and need to figure out what sales Nancy brought in. Now, if you do need to see the sales that Nancy brought in, you can go ahead and double click the pivot table value, and this is known as drilling down the report, which adds in a new sheet for Nancy's sales. I can essentially do this for all of my salespeople. I'm going to do one for Ann here by double clicking and calling this Ann sales. I'll do one more. Andrew, double click. I'll call that Andrew sales. All right. Things are looking pretty good. I do want you to pause the video and practice these formatting techniques, sorting it, adding a number format, swapping the data source, and drilling down the report. Several things to practice here. Go ahead and pause the video and come back when you're ready. And when we come back, we do want to focus and shift gears a little bit onto formatting techniques and protection techniques for our workbook. Very interesting topics that we have to cover. Stay tuned. Don't forget to press play again when you practice these formatting and setup techniques for our pivot table. Welcome back. Hopefully you had fun playing around with the pivot tables in the previous exercises. But I am on another worksheet now called data validation. Very common thing that I have to do. Now in this spreadsheet, I'm actually sharing this out with multiple users, and we're required to fill in information. Things like the sales rep credit limit as well as the date. But I have certain criterias, and I want to make sure that all the spelling is consistent and correct. So in order to do that, I'm just going to build some data validation rules for these three columns. I want a drop-down list to show up when they select a cell from sales rep that will display the salespeople names. I also want them to only issue up to 999 credits. And they're only allowed to show the year's worth of data. Nothing from the past and nothing in the future, just this year. So let me start out with the sales rep here by highlighting all of the cells that I want to add data validation to and running up to my data tab because I can find the data validation inside of my data tools. Now inside of my data tab where I can see my data tools, I'll have an option for data validation. If I give that a click, it will let me fill out a little window with 3 different tabs known as Setting, Input Message, and Error Alert. Now for the setting there, you get to change it to choose whether or not you want a whole number, decimals, a list of items. That's a drop down. Let me select a list of items that people can pick from. And now it ends up letting me choose a source where I can actually collapse this window, select the source, and then expand this window. And I'm essentially building a drop-down list that's going to ignore any blank cells within the cell there when I hit OK. Now you're allowed to add in an input message that displays when someone's on top of the cell. Please use drop-down. Just make sure that all the spelling is consistent for our sales rep. I also have an error message. And when you hit OK here, now that I've set up an input message and an error alert, these are going to show up. There's my input message. I can always move it around if it's in the way. And then there's my drop down. So if I end up typing in like Faz, incorrect spelling, please use the drop down list to select a sales rep name. I'm going to choose Jake there. And now each and every cell has a drop down. If I want, I can change one of these values, and then it ends up changing the drop down. So what usually people do is they'll hide, or they'll put it on a separate sheet, so that way people don't change that value. There's still 2 more examples that I want to show you before having you practice this, but you're more than welcome to pause the video and practice sales rep if you want. But let me cover credit limit as well, because I want to have a whole number this time, from 0 to 999. And if I go to my data tab and choose data validation, for the settings here, this time I'm going to choose whole number, and the options will be presented to me. The max and the min. Between that range, I don't have to put an input message or error alert. Those are optional. I can just hit OK. Now if I put the number 1, it works. If I put the number 0, it works. So I put the number 1000 though, it will give me a built-in error message. I can also add in a date range. I can highlight these cells, and there's an option for dates as well. I'm going to put the start date as the beginning of the year. And then the end date, I'm just going to hit today's date, which is Control colon. That'll add in today's date, Control and a colon. Instead of typing it, it'll save you time. So I can't put anything past this year, and I can't put anything in the future. That 11.5 works. Data validation is useful. A very common practice is that people hide the column, and then they'll either protect the worksheet, which we're going to cover today, or they'll add a separate sheet and they'll choose the values from there, just so people don't mess around and change the values like I did. Before moving on from this, if you haven't already practiced this, I do want you to pause the video and try doing a couple data validations where you set the criteria, you set the rules, you set the input message. Once you're ready with this, let's come back, because I do want to cover something known as conditional formatting, where we can highlight cells based off certain conditions or rules or criteria that we've set, or add icons, color scales, data bars, a lot of interesting things with conditional formatting. See you soon. Practice this data validation first though. Another really cool formatting trick that we have available inside the Home tab of Excel is conditional formatting, where we can select a column. I'm going to hit Control Spacebar when I'm inside of a column to select the column. As long as I'm inside the column, it'll select the entire column for me. And I am inside the column, so I'm in good shape. Let me hit Control Spacebar here. Conditional formatting allows you to highlight cells or add icons or color scales. We're going to run through a couple. But the basic ones allow you to just simply select a column and set a condition, a rule that highlights things. I'm going to do listing price. It's just going to list and highlight listing prices that I'm looking for between a range that I'm okay with. Maybe we'll do 100,000 to about 250,000. And if these listing prices show up, I want it to be a green fill and hit OK. That's a basic conditional format. There are other ones where you can add color scales. Let me hit Control Spacebar on square feet, where I can go to my Home tab and choose color scales. And I can essentially set a rubric where it finds the maximum, the minimum, in the middle, and it sets a red, green, and yellow tone, a gradient tone for those colors. The lower it gets, the more closer to red it gets. The higher it gets, the more closer to green it gets. This is one of those conditional formats, though, that you can go and customize. You can leave it as this. This is just using the minimum, maximum in the middle. But under conditional formatting, if this is selected, you have an option to manage the rule. Managing the rule will allow you to edit the rule. And if you edit the rule, you can actually change the rubric that it uses. I want to use a number for my midpoint, my minimum, and my maximum. So it's going to start turning red when it sees 1,200. It's going to start turning yellow when it sees about 1,500. And it's going to start seeing green when it sees about 1,750. Oh, not 2,750, 1,750. Let's fix that. And when I hit OK, you're going to see a drastic change to this color scale now. If I end up changing one of these values, it will also change based off the color scale requirement that I've set. I also can do icon sets, where I can set my bedrooms. I'm going to select the letter there. And I can choose these icon sets that I assign, like maybe these boxes. But they're not going to always align up perfectly, like the 4 lined up 4, but the 3 lined up with the 2 boxes. This is another example where you select the column, and you can actually manage the rule from here. This time you're going to edit the rule, but you're going to assign the icons to the correct value. Now it's important to start from the right-hand side and change this to number first, otherwise everything will reset itself as you do this. So now I'm just going to set the values 4, 3, 2, and 1. Again, it's important to set this part first, because if you don't and you switch it, it's going to reset the value again. And now I have my icon set here and hit OK. I can do the same thing for bathrooms. I can select it, add an icon set. Here I'm going to use the 4 color ratings. And this one looks like it comes out correct because there's only 4 values. Now the cool thing about conditional formats that I want you to know is if you highlight the top row of a list, you can always go to your data tab and turn on the filter tool. And a lot of people don't notice that you're allowed to sort and filter based off colors, including the ones in conditional format. So I'm going to filter for maybe all of my 4 bedrooms here. I'm going to filter for the 4 bedrooms with the icon and filter with the 3 bathrooms. And I want to have the square footage within the green. So now I've narrowed down my searches quite a bit. These are all the houses within my listing price. These are all the green square footages with 4 bedroom and 3 bathrooms. So these drop downs are a little bit more better than slicers if you think about it, because we don't have sorting by color and sorting by icons, filtering by color within a slicer. It's only available in these drop downs. I do want you to practice this. I want you to practice this before moving on. And we're almost there. We're almost there. We just have to talk about linking data, protecting data, and commenting on cells. Very interesting stuff there. But before we do that, practice at least 2 or 3 conditional formats. Try to edit the rule. That's the big thing. Try to edit an icon, a color scale before moving forward. And don't forget to come back where we're going to finish off with linking data, comments, and protection. Now, a very underutilized tool in Microsoft Excel is the ability to use comments. Inside of the Review tab of Microsoft Excel, we have the option to use an entire command group devoted as comments to mark a comment on certain cells. Now, if I want to add a new comment on this cell here, let's link this cell to G7. I can go ahead and send this on its way. And then if this workbook is being shared, users can actually click on Show Comments, and they can see all the comments and what sheet it's accessed and located on, or what cell address it's located on. There can be multiple comments throughout the workbook. I can add another comment here. And users can essentially reply to these comments as well. If you are using a cloud service like OneDrive, you can also mention people's names and share the file directly from them and inside of the file. You don't have to use OneDrive share options from there. Or you can hit the share button up top. But again, a cloud service must be used for that. Now, comments have changed a bit. They used to not look like this. They used to look like what they now call notes. I have an option to add a note, a new note. This is how they used to look. And now we have them as notes that show up. My notes section, previous note, next note, show hide notes, show all notes. So before we do move on from this, it's a very small one, but practice adding in a comment. If you are using OneDrive or SharePoint in an organization, use the @ symbol and see if you can share the file with someone. Also try using in the standard notes, the older version of comments that we used to use. Notice how there is a tool that allows us to get these comments and convert them to the newer comments as well. Convert all notes. And it made it into a new comment there. Very fancy. Go ahead and practice this and come right back so we can talk a little bit about linking data here on this sheet. Welcome back. Hopefully you had fun playing around with the new and improved comment system that we have in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. But I do want to focus and spend some time. Let me close out this comments area. I just want to spend some time talking about linking data. How to link one value to another cell, and how to link one value from one sheet to another sheet. It's actually a pretty simple process that requires the use of formulas. If I have to link this cell to this cell here, I have to use a formula to do that by linking the cell address of the cell. So notice how this cell's highlighted, and when I hit enter, it links the value for it. And if the value ever changes, so does the cell that it's linked to. I even have the ability to link from other sheets. Like if I wanted to link from here and I wanted to grab the cell that says pay rate, I can do that, but the formula requires an extra additional piece to it. And that's the sheet name, where after the equal sign, you actually type in link from here, but you put a bang or an exclamation point at the end of it. And then you can actually select the cell address that you want. And when you hit enter, it will link from a previous or another sheet. If I go ahead and change this value, it's also going to change the value that it's linked. So linking data is useful. I don't like linking from one workbook to another workbook. Here's two different workbooks that I have. I can put one to one side and another to another side. I don't like doing this simply because of the fact that it's really hard to maintain. It is possible though. I can link it. It just adds the book name to it. But once you close the file and you share the file or email the file, they won't have access to this book. And it might be really difficult to maintain that linkage, so I don't like to do that anymore. Especially since most organizations are using cloud services. So I do want you to actually pause this video before moving on to our final topic known as protection, and just practice linking. Practice linking from one sheet, the same sheet, and from another sheet. And when you're done, go ahead and come back where we can cover our final topic known as protection, where we can allow some users to access certain areas and work inside the cells and lock other areas of the cells. Now, protection is a useful tool, but very underutilized. Inside of the Review tab, we have an entire command group known as protect. There are certain times where you get spreadsheets and you only want users to access certain areas of them. Like maybe these two yellow squares we want them to access, and everything else we want locked. Now, protection actually happens in two steps. The first step is unlock cells you want users to have access to. And the second step is to protect the worksheet. This basically enables the protect mode. So let's do step one. Let's unlock the cells that we want to have users access once we protect it. So I'm going to highlight these two squares. Now I hope you know this, but you can hold down the control key and highlight another chunk of squares if you need to. And then if you right click, one of the options that we have in Excel is to format these cells and to essentially unlock them. Because by default, every cell inside of Excel is locked. And inside the Format Cells window, we normally just play around with numbers, alignment, font. But on the right-hand side, there is a Protection tab. This Protection tab allows you to unlock these values here, or unlock those cells, so that when it comes time to protect the worksheet, we can choose to have the users be able to select the unlock cells. Now that we've done step one, I can always go to my Review tab to do step two and select Protect Sheet. Or I can right-click Protection, and the option to Protect Sheet is available. Now, from here, I have an option to assign a password, and I can choose Allow all users of this worksheet to, and I'm going to uncheck Lock Cells. That way they can only work with everything that's unlocked. They can only work with everything that's unlocked. That's these squares here. And once I hit OK, these settings will be applied. Now notice how my cell address box instantly went to this square here. It's not letting me go anywhere else besides these areas here. So if I type in values even, look, I'm just typing in the number 2. It's not letting me go anywhere besides those yellow squares. Until I actually go back and unlock the worksheet. I can go to the Review tab and hit Unprotect since I'm the one that assigned it. Before moving on from this, I do want you to practice protection by unlocking these two, highlighting them with that trick, and then right-clicking and using Format Cells, and then trying to protect the sheet at the very end by allowing users to select the unlock cells and nothing else. Don't forget to come back. We do have a conclusion here. But this was the final topic. Congratulations, you have completed Excel Advanced. Up next would be to take Excel Expert, where we cover advanced functions, including the newer ones that are available in Office 2021, like XLOOKUP and macros. Now in this session, the Excel Advanced session, we did cover list tables essentials as well as charting, and then we dived into reporting such as pivot tables, and we learned how to protect and link our worksheets at the very end with these formatting techniques. I do want to thank you for taking part in this training. This was provided by LearnIt. If you did enjoy this video, go ahead and like and comment what your favorite part was, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day. Until next time.